Good evening, everybody. Céad Míle Fáilte. Welcome to another live stream where I'm going to be sharing with you some driving tips and advice to help you be a better driver and ultimately pass that test. So get your questions in if you are unsure about any aspect of driving in Ireland or you have any questions about the driving test. I'm going to be going through this report sheet here. I'll explain the grade 2s and grade 3s as well as the grade 1s, and I'll explain to you what he said to me, the learner, in an email, and I'll let you know what the tester said as well about this test candidate. He got 4 grade 3s, 4 serious marks here, which is unfortunate and meant he hadn't really got much chance of passing. And I'm going to share with you as much as I can about this so you can learn from it and so you won't make the same mistakes as this person did. I have some signs on the screen here, 5 common road signs you need to know. So let me know in the comment section if you want to have an attempt at getting these right. Let me know. Anything to do with your driving test, applying for it, amending the driving test date, anything at all, you have to do it on the My Road Safety app, My Road Safety online portal, sorry. So that's very important. You can try ringing the RSA, but they want to handle everything now online, so that's the place to go. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoy it. Hit that subscribe button. It costs nothing and you'll be supporting me a little bit. I'm also on TikTok. Haven't made a TikTok video in a while, but check me out there, Dane1, and give me a follow on TikTok if you're on that platform. And of course, you can support me by PayPal and Revolut if you wish, if you want. You can make a voluntary donation there. Any support is much appreciated, folks, and thank you very much in advance. My email is there, danetyghe@gmail.com there, just on the bottom right. Let me know if you have any questions by email as well if I don't get to you in this video, in this live stream. So if you have a driving test report sheet that you'd like me to have a look at, that you're confused about, and you don't know where you went wrong, and the tester didn't give you much feedback, well then email me a screenshot or an attachment of the report sheet. But please let me know what happened in the test. Let me know what went wrong, what the tester said to you, because the more information I have, the better it is for me, and I can kind of fine-tune the feedback then. So email me, danetyghe@gmail.com, if you have any questions about the driving. Okay, couple of comments in there already. Ralph Rocks, hello to you, and Paul X, lots of grade 3s is right here, Paul. Yeah, a lot of grade 3s. He kind of gave up at one stage in the test anyway, so I don't think he's too bad of a driver. I don't think he's as bad as this reflects. I mean, this driving test report sheet looks a lot worse than the driver he is apparently. So I'll be getting onto that very soon. But first of all, I want to go through some. I want to give you some tips and advice that, like, just based on questions that I got from other learners and feedback that I got from other learners. So hopefully you can learn from what I'm about to share with you now that other learners emailed me in during the week. Graham Walsh, Dangerous Bend. Oh yeah, we got the first attempt at the road signs, and it's not Wojciech for a change. Graham Walsh, Dangerous Bend. That's right. Number 1 is a dangerous bend. Dangerous corner head is number 2. Absolutely correct. Keep right, number 3. That's it. Cul-de-sac is number 4. And the last one, not sure, it has a few meanings, but near my house it warns of a concealed entrance. That's right, near my house as well, warning of a concealed entrance. Very good, Graham. So the last one there is a warning sign. It's just warning you of some kind of danger ahead. A general warning sign for a hazard. It could be a really dangerous bend or a concealed entrance or something like that. Frostbite 337, hi then, driving test on the 24th of February after waiting 7 months, so going to be binge watching your videos. Well, that's good that you have the test. Glad you'll be watching the old videos, Frostbite. Best of luck to you. Let me know if you have any questions or just any aspect of driving you're not sure of. Lift Life, the goat. Well, you're very kind. Lift Life. I've been called a lot worse, so I appreciate that. Now let's get back to the emails that learners sent me in here and questions they asked that they weren't sure about the process of the driving and all that kind of stuff. So I got an email from a guy down in Waterford. He's at his wits' end because he's been waiting so long for his test, kind of like frostbite there, waiting a long, long time over 5 or 6 months, and he basically asked me, I'm waiting so long, I don't hear anything from the RSA. What are my options? Now, the options are very, very limited because really all you can do is wait for your invitation to do the test. There's not really a whole lot you can do. I did offer some advice. I'm not sure if you'll take it. You could change test centre. If you're doing your tests, for example, in Dungarvan, you could maybe change it to Waterford, or you could change if I don't know if to do tests in Youghal or Middleton. I'm not sure, but whatever the closest test centre is to you, either side of Dungarvan, maybe that's one option. And then you could try changing back the test centre to your original preferred location, and that allows the algorithm to refresh. And sometimes I'm hearing that new dates appear. I can't guarantee that, but that's what I hear. If you're really desperate and you're on a really long waiting list, you could get in touch with your local TD and see if they can push the issue on. I've heard of people doing that just because they're so desperate. So I mean, it's a bit of string pulling, but it does happen. You could ring the RSA and ask them what the story is. It's possible that there could be a mix-up with your application, that your application could have got lost in the system. Now it probably didn't. I mean, if they've initially made touch with you, I mean you're probably in the system and you just have to wait for your invite. But I had a guy there I was giving lessons to about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he actually had to ring the RSA and he had to get the local TD onto it because there was some genuine mix-up where the RSA sent him out an invite. It went to his spam email folder, so he didn't see it. He missed his invite, and he never got back on the list. So that was a bit of an unfortunate thing for him. So just on the off chance that you could have got an invite, don't forget to check your spam folder or your trash folder, whatever it is, just in case your emails from the RSA accidentally end up in there. It's could be worth doing. And then of course, if you are a frontline health worker, you could get a fast track test as well, but that's only going to be for the benefit of a certain small section of society. In the end, you're going to just have to really just wait for your invite. I know it's hard, and they are getting through the waiting list gradually. They are taking on more testers, but that's really all you can do. Um, Another learner then was emailed me in about roundabouts, and the problem with the roundabouts was she was getting mixed up between position and observation. So I would advise you just to try your best to listen very, very carefully to the tester, both in the driving test itself and when he's giving you feedback at the end, because it's just something small. I noticed that she lost out on position marks on the roundabout. I think she wasn't keeping left enough going straight. She was kind of cutting through the middle of the roundabout. I have a little graphic on that. I'll show you in a minute. But because she was so convinced that she'd done her observation right and so convinced that her mirrors were perfect, she wasn't actually focusing on the position, and I think that led to a mix up there on that when she was trying to describe it and reflect on it. I had another girl then who emailed me in during the week. She was doing her test and she said her windscreen washer was broken and leaking, so there was no water going up to wash the windscreens because there was a leak in it. And she asked me, "Is this going to be okay for the test?" I said to her, "It should be fine. It's not a serious issue, and just to let me know how you get on with it." So she did the test anyway, and thankfully she passed. And the examiner never said anything at all about the windscreen washer, that it wasn't working. So it's understandable that learners would be nervous about these things. Something like a windscreen washer not working is like, it's not ideal, but it's not serious enough to cause a test to fail. It's not like, say, your car not starting or a dead battery or a flat tire or something like that. If you're not sure of anything like that, you can email me or let me know here in the comment section. I'll do my best. But some of them will be so specific that I won't have heard of it. Like I honestly never heard of a windscreen washer thing leaking before, just before your driving test. She was very unlucky to have this happen to her, but it was not an issue anyway. The tester never even mentioned it, and she passed, as I said. If that does happen and you're asked to perform a check on the windscreen washer, I said to the learner, just point to the control and explain how it works. As in, you pull it towards you to get the water on the front windscreen, and you push it this way to get the water on the back windscreen. And that might just be enough for the tester, because these days they're still standing outside the car when they're doing the technical checks. another one of these ridiculous COVID rules. So the majority of testers are standing outside while they're asking you about the wipers and the lights and all this kind of stuff. So they probably don't want to get drowned by water anyway. So that's why that wouldn't be a big issue or a big deal. But as I said, it was fine for this girl anyway. Another learner then emailed me in about reversing and turnabout. So she was saying that she got done for yielding on the reverse and the turnabout. And she asked a very good question. How far away does the other car have to be before you stop for it on the reverse or on the turnabout? So it'll always depend on the situation, but it's important to state just first off that when you're doing the turnabout and the reverse, observation is very much linked to yield right of way. So yield right of way is basically tester. If you get a mark there, a tester is saying you didn't give way to someone else. So that's why it's always good to do a full like 360-degree look around at the start of your turnabout or reverse, like all around, just to check out for any danger, any cars reversing the driveways, any cyclists coming, or anything like that. Now look, I can't really give you a distance. Like I'll give you a distance. Like if you're doing your reverse around a corner, you don't have to stop for every Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes behind you, because if you've only just seen them and they're 100 meters away, you can still keep reversing and making progress. Now, when they get to the stage where they're about maybe 50 meters from you, and it's kind of the stage where you'd easily read the number plate, that's when you have to stop then. But if you stop every time you see them in a far distance, that's not going to be very practical and it's not going to show good flexibility. So you have to keep going even if there's someone behind you to a certain extent. And then when they get close to you, when they're at the stage where they're 4 or 5 seconds from overtaking you, that's when you have to stop and let them go. On the reverse, they should overtake you fine. If they can't go around you, or they won't go around you, or they're not sure what you're doing, give them 4 or 5 seconds, and then if they're still there, they're still not moving, just go back to the start and start again. That should help alleviate that situation. Similarly on the turnabout, when you're on the turnabout, make sure you look around at the start, because at the very start, that's the time on the turnabout when you have to yield to other traffic. Because once you've already started the turnabout and you've gone across the road and reversed back and all that, you kind of have the right of way then, because you're kind of in the middle of the road, and you'll usually be allowed to finish out your turnabout then. But at the very start of the turnabout, that's when you have to be eagle-eyed, folks. So make sure you have your eyes peeled like that. You're extremely observant and vigilant at the start, and if you see there's a cyclist coming, or there's a car coming around, or you might hear them if the windows down, you might hear a car coming, just stop, give way, and then once you start it, then you'll be fine. Other cars might come, they may not come on the turnabout. They'll usually stop and let you finish out your maneuver, because it's a fairly quick maneuver anyway. It shouldn't be any big deal, and then you carry on. But if they do try and force their way through you in the middle of a turnabout, I mean that's an unusual situation. It's very unlikely, but just stop. Let them do what they're doing, and it's a reflection on them, not on you, because they should really give way to you, and the vast majority of the time they will on the turnabout and the reverse. Sorry, on the turnabout, on the reverse they have right away. Sorry for that mix up there. Okay, another email then. Let me see, what was the next one about? Yes, someone was kind of done their EDT lessons. They're looking forward to doing the driving test, but they have no sponsor. They could live out in the country, or they might not originally be from Ireland, and they might not have a wide circle of family and friends, and they're wondering, what are my options then? Like, there's not really, you don't really have a whole lot of options unless you can kind of amend and adjust your schedule to suit somebody else's, that you could maybe bring them into town or give them a lift home from town while they're sitting in the seat beside you, as long as they're a full licensed driver over 2 years. Like, unless you get creative and get your thinking cap on, there's really not much you can do apart from keep getting regular driving lessons on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis to build up your skills and to build up your knowledge. Because there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no system whereby sponsors can make themselves available to learners and be there beside them. It might be a good idea actually, but I'm not aware of any other options. So unless you have someone with you, and I know it's a tricky one, unless you have someone there to help you and support you, like a parent, brother, sister, friend, it's tricky, I know, and you really just have no option only to keep getting lessons, because that's really the best thing you can do in that situation. Next question, next query. Just a general one I get a lot. Dane, do I have to indicate when I'm going straight on the mini roundabout? Like there might not be an exit on the left, but there's just a completely straight exit and a right exit. And I would say no, you don't indicate on the approach, but try and indicate left as you're leaving the roundabout when you're going straight. Okay, if you're going straight. So because you're going straight 12 o'clock, there's no need to indicate on the approach. But when you get about halfway through, even if there's no exit on the left, then indicate left. That'll be good. I mean, you could indicate left beforehand. It's not really a big deal, but it's kind of not. There's not a whole lot of point because you're in danger of when the wheel straightens anyway. The indicator is danger of switching off, and you have to redo it. So you're better off just doing it when the wheel is in the balanced position to do it, and it'll stay on then. Um, if it's a really, really small roundabout, like a really, 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 really tiny mini roundabout, you don't really have to worry about indicating off it, especially if it's going to interfere with your steering, okay? But in general, if you're going straight on a roundabout, keep left, or as left as you can, and indicate to exit, as long as it doesn't interfere with your steering, okay? Next one then, I had an interesting email from a guy in up in County Meath. He was faulted for signals, and um, he said that the indicators kept switching off when he was parking and pulling off. And this is something you have to be very careful of, because if you have a habit um, when you're parking or moving off, if you have this habit of turning the wheel unnecessarily, like let's say you're moving off, for example, okay, you're about to move off from the side of the road, maybe you're just moving off after your turnabout or a hill start or something like that. So if you're moving off, okay, like that, there should, generally speaking, be no need to start turning the wheel early like that and doing a bit of dry steering. No need, because then if you kind of accidentally bring it back, then the indicator is going to be in danger of switching off, because the indicator will switch off when you straighten the wheel. So you don't want to lose any marks on signals there, and you could accidentally be losing out there because you might be so focused on your mirrors and your blind spot that you might not realize that all this unnecessary dry steering is kind of affecting your indicators. The same when you're parking. Just because when you're parking, if you can at all, just come in nice and gradually like this, and then gently like that with the wheel. So because if you do too much of this steers as you're parking, you can inadvertently switch off the signals, and that can lead then to you getting marks on signals stopping, and that's really just the tester saying you didn't indicate properly when you parked. You usually went off early, so it's just something to be aware of there when you're parking and moving off. Okay, it can happen if you're not experienced or if you have these kind of awkward habits with the wheel. And that's why that poor chap lost 2 or 3 marks on signals stopping. Like, it's not a serious thing, but if you're losing 2 or 3 of them on it, and you're kind of borderline pass fail anyway, those 2 or 3 easy marks you're losing on signal stopping are going to kind of, they could cost you in the end if you're touch and go. So it's worth remembering that. Next one then. Another learner asked me, he said he was worried and a little bit stressed that he lost his logbook. So his EDT, Essential Driver Training logbook, he lost it, and he has his test coming up, and he wanted to know, do I have to have the logbook for the driving test? The answer is no, you do not need the logbook for the driving test, because the lessons are all logged online, and the driving tester is not going to be too worried about looking at your logbook or checking it or anything like that. So don't worry about that if you don't have a logbook. It's no big deal. They're all done online. But you have to make sure that you have your learner permit, okay? It's very, very important that you have your learner permit when you go in to do your driving test. That's the only document you'll need and that they'll check. Okay, so another question then from a learner. Let me see. Yeah, this is an interesting one, and I haven't really touched on it too much before, and I hope you pay attention and bear with me here, because this could be the difference between passing and failing for you folks. So I read in my emails a lot about people who've done their 12 lessons, okay, and they've got their lessons and they've done their 12 EDT because they have to do them, okay, and then the next step then is to get some practice, hopefully, and eventually do the driving test. But what I find is a lot of learners don't actually get lessons before the driving test. They're just relying on the lessons that they got for the 12 EDT lessons. Now, if you're a good, confident, and natural driver, well, maybe you might be okay then. You can pull it off easily enough. But if you're not and it's your first time and maybe you've moved here from America, or you've come here from India or Pakistan or somewhere like that, the 12 EDT lessons could have been done 6 or 7 months ago. You know, it's a long time ago. And in the 12 EDT lessons, you're probably going to be doing different things. Like you might be driving maybe more on country roads and maybe some main roads, and doing kind of stuff and routes that you might not necessarily do for the driving test. Whereas when you're doing pre-test driving lessons, the idea is to stick to the test routes, mostly in town, and do specific junctions that you're likely to encounter in your driving test. So you might not always be doing that in your EDT lessons, and that's why I have to state very, very clearly and say to you, to give you the best advice, once you've gotten your 12 EDT lessons, okay, keep in touch with your driving instructor, and make sure, hopefully you have a good relationship with him or her, and ask them then, can you fit me in if I need a few lessons for my driving test? And make sure that you get a series of driving lessons, at least 4 or 5 or 6, depending on your standard and depending on how much time and money you have. Because the driving lessons that you get for your test are specifically designed to help you pass your test. The driving lessons that you get for your EDT are specifically designed to give you a good grounding in driving, to get the basics right, and to get a feel for the car and get a feel for junctions. So just make sure you differentiate the two, okay? It's very important you get lessons for your driving test as well, okay? Another question then, let me see. Yeah, so this is about mock tests, and I've heard a lot of stories about learners who have done mock tests and have done well on that, but then they end up failing their driving test. And then others then who have who encounter mistakes on the driving test that they never did in the actual lessons or in their mock test or something like that. So first, just a point on mock tests, okay? Like, mock tests can be a good way of finding out mistakes. They can be a good way of seeing how you react under the conditions of a driving test. But if a mock test is done with your existing driving instructor, who you know reasonably well and you have a good relationship with and a good rapport with, and you're doing all these mock tests with him or her, that's not really realistic. You're not repeating the conditions that you'll have in your driving test. So you can be kind of easily lulled into a false sense of security there. If you do a mock test or two with a different instructor who is more formal and who is less friendly and less chatty, and who treats it exactly like it should be treated, a formal driving test, well then that can actually be very beneficial. But I generally don't bother with any of these mock tests. I prefer to teach the skills of driving and focus on the skills rather than pretending to be a driving examiner, okay? Because that's not what I want to be. So just be careful on that, okay? The mock tests can be useful if they're done right, but they're not the answer to all your ills, okay? And other learners have asked about the different mistakes that they have. Like, you have to understand, when you go out for a drive every time, you're going to meet different cars, different traffic conditions, different weather conditions. It's always going to be different. So please don't think just because mistakes you've made in your test are completely different to any you've ever made before. It's not necessarily a reflection that you're a bad driver. It's just a reflection on the different conditions. It's always going to be different when you drive each time. So just bear that in mind, and don't be too hard on yourself as well. Another question then from a learner asked about, it was kind of a funny one, but he asked me, and is the cost of doing a driving test the same in my car as it is in my father's car or the driving instructor's car? The cost of doing the driving test is exactly the same no matter what car you use, but that's in terms of the application process. But if you once you're doing your test, depending on what car you use, you may have to pay to rent a driving school car, or you might be able to use your own car. But obviously there's no cost for that if you're using your own car. But there is a cost if you're renting a car from a driving school. The driving testers themselves, they don't provide cars. Okay, some people seem to think that you can get a car in the test center. That's not the way it works. When you turn up for a driving test, you have to have your own car. Now that could be your own personal car, it could be your parents' car, or you could be renting it from a driving school. But the application process is €85. Sorry, the application process is €85 no matter what car you're using. Okay. Another question then from a learner was curious about the whole mounting of the curb thing. She was in a bit of an awkward situation in her test. She was stuck behind a truck, and she literally, there was no way around it. It was a very narrow road, and she was stuck behind him for about 30 seconds. And eventually, the tester said, "Look, you're going to have to go up on the curb there to go around him because otherwise we'll be here all day." And she was very nervous about this, very reluctant to do this, and I can completely understand why. Like, generally speaking, as a general overall rule, you do not mount the curb in the test, because if you do, it usually will mean that you've failed the test. However, if you do it under the instruction of your driving tester, that's absolutely fine. He's not out to get you. He's not trying to trick you, okay? He's just trying to be practical and realistic and get you out of a bit of an awkward situation. So you can mount the curb to get out of an awkward situation under the instruction of the tester. Okay, so just bear that in mind. But and like, it's an awkward situation, you wouldn't generally mount it yourself. But if the tester tells you to, well then you've nothing to lose then. Another one then. Yeah, I've had a few emails from drivers from America who might be, say for example, they might be Irish people that have lived in America, or they could be American citizens moving over here for a period of time. And it's important to say, if you are one of those people, driving in Ireland is a lot different to driving in America, okay? You are going to need quite a few lessons, generally speaking, to get up to the standards required to pass a test in Ireland. Doing a test in Ireland is a lot different to America, and all the states are different in America. Some of the tests are pretty basic out there, where you're driving in a car park, and sometimes police test you as well. I've heard. I'm not an expert now. I don't know the ins and outs of doing a driving test in America. But if you're doing a test here in Ireland, and you're used to driving for the last 5 or 10 or 15 years in America, you're going to have to get a series of driving lessons way beyond your EDT. Okay, because the level that you'll have to get to is very, very high in comparison to the standards in America. So make sure you get your lessons, make sure you practice on different types of roads, because generally speaking, you're going to have more narrow roads, like tight roads, loads of housing estates, narrow Viking streets that you might not have stateside. So it's very important just to be wary of that, and to understand that your 12 EDT or your reduced 6 EDT lessons may not be enough for that. Next, then, speaking of America, I'm just wondering, have any of you folks out there had any difficulty with applying for the driving test? And a girl emailed me, and she was trying to apply for the test from America, but she wasn't able to do it because, I think what she said, the system could detect that she wasn't in Ireland, and that prevented her from applying for the test. Then when she got her nephew in Cork to do it, he was able to apply on her behalf absolutely fine. So I wonder, have you had this trouble? Have you tried to apply from abroad? If you have, let me know. And if you're having any issues with applying for the driving test, let me know as well. I'd be interested to find out. I know some people that use Apple iPads or iPhones are having a bit of trouble as well, but I think generally it works okay. But let me know if you've had any trouble with that. Let me see. Now, Colester in Dublin. Colester Driving Test Centre, okay? I think that's in the north side of Dublin. If there's anybody out there that has a test in Colester or is about to do one there, can you let me know in the comment section? Because I got an email from a guy about 3 or 4 days ago, and he turned up for his driving test in Colester, okay? And there was a complete confusion. There was a sign downstairs saying that driving test. The sign was a little bit confusing, but a little A4 paper sheet said, driving test, waiting area upstairs in the boardroom. So he took this to mean that this is the driving test waiting area. He just kind of misread the sign, and I can understand how he did this. The sign was trying to say to him, the driving test waiting area is upstairs in the boardroom. Okay, he took it to mean driving test area is here, this level. So because he didn't go upstairs to the boardroom, wherever, I don't know, I've never been to Colester testing, I don't know, but because he didn't go up there, it just basically meant that his test was cancelled. He was extremely frustrated and disappointed because he'd been waiting so long for this test, and because it was about, I don't know, it was about 15 minutes later by the time he went up and found out, because nobody was coming out to him. The tester basically said to him, look, you're too late, I can't do anything about it now, you're going to have to reapply again and pay the fee for your troubles as well. So folks, is there anybody out there that's done a test in Colester, or you're about to do a test in Colester? Please make sure you're in the right waiting area. I believe it's upstairs in the boardroom, okay? You don't want to miss out like this poor chap did. And this reminds me, actually, this is why I always recommend people to get professional driving lessons before your driving test, because your own local driving instructor will be able to advise you of all the ins and outs. Like in a test center like this, where there's a couple of levels, your driving instructor will be able to say to you, okay, you go inside, you go upstairs, and he or she will know the various intricacies of this, so you don't fall into any pitfalls there. Okay, so that's why it's always good to get driving lessons before the test, especially the hour beforehand. Okay, and finally, then, just from learners' emails, a learner asked me, do I need the hazard lights on when reversing around the corner? No, you don't need the hazard lights on when reversing around the corner. As far as I'm aware, like, it's not a big deal if you do, but the hazard lights are for, like, they're meant to be used in an emergency. You know, if you're broken down, if you're at the scene of an accident, if your car is getting towed. The hazard lights are not for reversing around the corner. That's not why they were invented, okay? When you're reversing around the corner, your reversing lights will come on fine, okay? And if there's some reason why they won't come on, well, you could indicate left then if you want. Indicate left, don't indicate left. It's not a big deal. Like, I talked to a tester about this before. He said, look, it's no big deal. We don't really care whether they indicate left or not. But if they do indicate left reversing around a corner, for God's sake, remind them to indicate right when they're going to move off again. But generally, if you're reversing around a corner, just the reversing lights are fine, okay? Another learner turned up for a car in miles per hour instead of kilometers per hour, wondering, is that okay? That's fine. There's no problem there. The testers don't need to be able to, like, the testers are not going to be leaning over and looking at the speedometer. They'll kind of know, they'll know the speed anyway. So, like, if you're, the majority of cars should be in kilometers anyway. That's the best way to have it. But if it's in miles, like, it's not really a big deal. And just finally on the questions for learners, like, this comes up a lot actually, and I want you to listen carefully here, because I think this is an important point for people, that when it's overtaking parked cars, a lot of people ask, Dane, do I indicate when I'm overtaking parked cars, and how long do I leave the indicator on for? I'm never sure. There is a little bit of discretion involved here. As I always keep saying, situations are unique. You don't really have to indicate overtaking parked cars if you're not moving out over the white line, or wherever the white line would be, okay, like the middle of the road. But if you do feel that two or four wheels are going to cross the centre white line, or wherever the centre of the road is, well, then it is a good idea to give an indicator, just as courtesy, to let people know of your intentions, and it makes you more visible on the road as well. Don't mind any of this nonsense if anyone can see you, or if no one can benefit from it, then you don't indicate. That's a lot of nonsense. You don't know who's there that could benefit from it. For all you know, there could be someone sitting in a car 40 meters away that's about to get out of the car, and you might not see them, but they'll see you. And if they see your indicator on, they might stay in the car then until you're past. Okay, so be careful with all that stuff about nobody can see you, or there's nobody around, unless you've got 360-degree vision and eyes in the back of your head, the side of your head, and in your backside. You're not going to know everything around you. Okay, so it's good to indicate if you're crossing the centre white line, and generally just indicate for the first parked car. Okay, that means when your passenger door gets level with their back door, just switch it off, let it off, because you're already out in a position where you said you were going to be. And if you have the indicator on any longer, well, then people might think that you're parking on the right, or they could think that you're taking a right further up, and it's just misleading, okay? So, indicate if you're crossing the middle of the road. Just for the first car is fine. When you're level with the first car, knock it off, okay? If you do have to come back in because other cars coming towards you may have the right of way, so if you do have to come back in, there's no need to indicate left back in. Why is that? Because it could be misleading. People might think you're parking, and then somebody could overtake you on the right, and that could lead to a dodgy situation. But if you are move, and then you will want to move out again, and so if you've moved back in, don't indicate left, but indicate right then just before you move out, as you're waiting, and then that lets people know then that your intention is to move out and that you're not staying parked. So that's my advice there. And don't forget as well, make sure you know your car. Sometimes if you give just a little gentle flick up on the indicator, it will go on 3 times and then go off again, and that can be a handy way to indicate when you're overtaking smaller hazards, or maybe a small line of parked cars. So there are just some of the questions that came up this week during the week, from emails. I hope you can learn something from that, and I hope that maybe cleared up a bit of confusion for you too. Okay, so let's get back then to a few comments, and then I'm going to get into this driving test report sheet. I'm going to explain what happened. I'm going to explain what the tester said. Also, hopefully, you don't make the same mistakes that this poor chap did. So we had Graham and Frostbit. Alex Fogarty, have you ever heard of the Mallow Test? I have heard of the Mallow Test Centre in Cork. It's in the racecourse, Alex, isn't it? Mallow Racecourse in Cork, yeah. There's a good driving instructor down there, John Kerwin, Dr. Bob's School of Motoring. So check him out there. He sounds like a good old skin, and he can certainly help you out down there. He's a good man. So what's up down in Mallow, Alex? Is there anything about that you're curious about? I don't know much. Like, I've driven past Mallow on the way to Limerick, or where was it, on the way to Kerry or something. I think Dingle I was going down to. But I wouldn't be familiar with it in detail. Lisa Murphy, do you be waiting as long for a retest? That's that in relation to doing a test again after you failed. He's doing it in Mullingar. If he, whether that's your brother or son or whatever, um, generally they will try and fast track a retest. So if you fail a test and then reapply, they will try and get you a retest in about 6 or maybe 8 weeks. It depends on the waiting list. Depends on how busy they are, but that's what they want, and this is all part of the strategy to cut down on people having learner permits for prolonged periods of time. Okay, so they'll try and get to you in 6 or 8 weeks, but it could be a bit longer depending on the test centre there, Lisa. But best of luck to him, whoever he is. Myths NUFC, is that Newcastle? I wonder. Can we extend the 2 year learner permit for one more year if one hasn't scheduled any final road test in those 2 years? Yes, you can. You can get a 1 year extension on your learner permit if you haven't done a test, but you have to apply for a test to get that 1 year extension. Okay, so you either have to have done a test, and if you've done a test and failed it, you'll get a 2 year permit. If you've only applied for a test but you haven't done it yet, you'll get a 1 year permit. So the answer to that question is yes, you can. Frostbite 337. Can I just say I rang the RSA about the long waiting times, and they were so rude about asking about waiting times. You wait and ask, then we'll just say we can't tell you about waiting times and hang up. Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate there, Frostbite. Um, you see, the truth is they don't want to be on the phone to you. They want to be. They're trying to push everything online, and that's their plan. You see, and you know, typical RSA, they don't tell us anything. Like we like if something happens to do with driving or driving laws or changes to the test or testers or whatever, we're driving instructors. We're usually the last to know. They'll do a press release and they'll tell the media before they tell us, and then we'll find out on local radio or in the newspapers or something like that. So um, don't think it's just you. We as driving instructors have to live with this every day because they literally tell us nothing. They don't inform us of anything. But when it comes to asking us to do our check test that we have to do every 2 years, and when it comes to asking us for our €250 registration that they want from driving instructors, well, they are absolutely on the money there, and they are never late about that, and they are so efficient when it comes to taking your money. But when it comes to giving you a service, well, that's a different story. As I said in the TikTok video, RSA, right shower of arseholes. So I hear what you're saying there, Frostbite. Jan Kowalski, I think. Why would you stop for a car on a turnabout? That's a good point. You wouldn't actually usually. There is no space anyway. You are almost sideways on the road. They have to stop. Absolutely. You generally would not stop for another car on the turnabout because you've already started your move, okay? And you're basically blocking the road. So by you stopping, they can't go anywhere. You know. What I was saying there at the start was at the very very start of the turnabout, before you actually move off and make your first move to the right. That's when it's important to yield on the turnabout if there's another car coming or about to come. But once you've started a turnabout, you basically have to keep going unless the other driver is trying to force their way through, or maybe a pedestrian might walk on the path coming close to you, or a cyclist might have come close. Then you'll have to yield then maybe, but for other cars, no, they won't foot through. Yeah, that's true. Irish J, What's up, Dane? I passed my test in Nina Friday. Thank you for all the helpful videos. That's brilliant, Irish J. Congratulations to you. Delighted to hear that. Well done. That's a full European license now for you. You have to show for all your trouble. So congratulations, Diego Amarim. Is there some penalty if my window washer doesn't work on the test day? Well, that is interesting. You asked that screen washer, yeah. Because I just said it about 10 minutes ago about the girl who had a screen washer that wasn't working, and there was no issue at all. So if you go back to the start of the video, I was actually talking about that. But to answer your question quickly, um, it's not ideal. Yet you should have your screen washer working, especially if it's kind of a day where it might be wet, but not like if there's a chance that grime or dirt is going to be on the windscreen. Like if you get stuck behind a lorry or something like that, it's always good to have it. Have your screen wash working, but um, this girl anyway did her test. The screen wash thing wasn't working, but it was no issue. The tester never even asked about it, and it wasn't an issue. So no, it's usually not a problem. It could be a potential inconvenience, but not a major problem usually. But it's better to have it working anyway. Paul X, or sorry, Dennis Sherry just made a donation. Thank you very much, Dennis. I appreciate that. Any help, I'm very grateful for. Thank you, Dane, for all of your great tips. Passed my test in Sligo in September. Sligo, one of the few counties in Ireland I haven't been to yet. The northwest is a bit tricky to get to when you're living in the southeast corner, but I do plan to get to Yates Country soon. But well done, Dennis. That's a great achievement, and I'm glad I was able to help point you in the right direction. So well done to you. Paul X, same issue in Dean's Grange. What's that, Paul? Oh, here, sorry, you have it here. You have to go up the stairs. Thank you for sharing that, Paul. Dean's Grange, then, as well as Colester, folks. If you're doing a test in any of these two places, make sure you know where to wait, because if you get your waiting position wrong while you're waiting for the tester to call you in, like, you could easily end up losing your fee, and you're going to have to start and go back to the back of the queue. So Dean's Grange and Colester, apparently you have to go upstairs to be in the proper waiting area. Thank you very much for sharing that, Paul. Protox 95, Dane the main man, got me my license. That's good. Everyone give him a follow. Well worth it. Thank you very much, Protox 95. Appreciate the kind words. Congrats to you. Zolzaya Sad Namajara. That's it. I've just butchered your name. So apologies for that. I passed my test last October. That's brilliant. Thank you, Dane, for your videos to help me out. You're very, very welcome, Zolzaya. I'm very glad I was able to help you out. I just like making the information free, freely available to you, so you can go ahead and get your full license and then get on with your life. Do what you have to do, whether it's in education or whether it's in work. I like doing that because this thing should be demystified. And then if you want to show me support, you can do so voluntarily. It's completely up to you. Either way, I like being able to do this on YouTube and to help you achieve your goals. So thank you for those kind words, Zolzaya, if I'm saying your name right. Adam Donovan, I was here last Sunday and said I had a test on Monday morning. Well, of course, it got cancelled due to the fog. Oh dear. Great luck learners have. Sorry to hear that, Adam. Yeah. Sorry to hear that. Sometimes they'll offer compensation if they do last minute cancellations, because sometimes people have the turn up for the test all set to go, and all of a sudden their test gets cancelled because of unforeseen circumstances. Now, this could be something genuine, like a tester getting sick or a sudden bereavement or something like that. These things do happen, so you have to be understanding of that. But it's just so frustrating that they don't have backup testers there, so people can still do the driving test with a backup tester. But that's unfortunate for you, Adam. But the fog, yeah, sometimes the weather will have an adverse impact on tests. But hopefully you won't be waiting too long, and you'll be on the retest list. So you hopefully will get it in about 6 or 8 weeks. I hope anyway, depending on the waiting list in your area. Martin Mockler, hey Dane, I have my driving test tomorrow, and it's the first time. Any tips? I am bricking it. Martin, it depends on what your driving is like. Like maybe be more specific. What areas are you worried on? What areas are you concerned about? Okay, I would say like a few things anyway. Um, don't drive too slow. Be decisive. I mean, if it's safe to go with the speed limit, then go with the speed limit. I would also say get a driving lesson beforehand. Hopefully you have one, because that will help get you in the right frame of mind. Don't forget to look back on the reverse around the corner. Okay, very important to look behind on the reverse, and just keep it as smooth as possible. Bring up that clutch slow so you don't have the car jumping around like that. Okay, but let me know if there's any specifics. Okay, then has a comment. Do you have to have your handbrake up every time you stop? What's your view on using the handbrake other than parking? Well, there's actually a lot of discretion on this. It's like there is no special rule on using the handbrake. Like, you don't have to use it at lights. You don't like It's not a legal requirement to use it. But I would say you should, pardon me, you should use the handbrake at lights if you're stopped on a hill, or if you're stopped over 4 or 5 seconds, or if you're stopped on kind of an uneven surface, just so the car doesn't roll back or forward. That's what I would say for just for general safety. Okay, and I'd say the same in an automatic car, because the automatic cars, they do roll back a little bit sometimes, and there is the forward creep on automatics as well. So I would say that, because it secures the car as well. I mean, it's like, take for example at night time. If you're at a junction at night, you should use the handbrake when you stop the majority of the time. I'm not saying every time, but the majority of the time, because if you have your foot on the foot brake all the time at night, your brake lights are coming on, and you're dazzling the car behind you. So that's what I would say about the handbrake. But just remember, there's no special rule. Different driving instructors will have their own preferences. Like, I personally like using the handbrake a good bit. Other driving schools will say, "Ah, no, don't bother using it." It's not that they're wrong. It's just that I think it's safer to use the handbrake more often. But there is a lot of discretion. There is a lot of discretion involved. Okay. Okay. Alex Fogarty there. Yeah, I'll just get Alex's comment, and I'm going to get to this driving test and then get back to the comments, folks. Okay. So the Alex says it is the race course in Mallow. Yeah, that's the driving test center he was referring to. None in particular. Just have my test next month. So wondering if you'd have any tips. Well, give Dr. Bob a shout. John Kerwin, Dr. Bob School of Motoring. He's a good guy there. And as for any tips, well, it's just the same as I said there a few minutes ago to the other fella who was asking as well. It depends on what your weaknesses are, or what you're worried about. So just let me know if you have any specific worries about the driving test. Now, anyway, look, you're going to get loads of tips in this live stream, I hope, anyway. So, I mean, I'll be here for about an hour and a half, give or take, anyway. So I'm sure you'll get lots from this. And I have another video coming up on Wednesday, actually. I usually put a video out on Monday, but I have the live stream today, so I'll give it a few days to run its course, and then on Wednesday I'm going to have a video on progress at mini roundabouts. So that's a really good video. I have some really good tips on that. Okay, so Wednesday evening, maybe 5, maybe 6 o'clock actually, Wednesday evening. Check out my channel. You remember you can click on the bell notifications as well, so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Okay, so Wednesday I'll have a great video on progress at roundabouts, because it is kind of in response to people who have emailed me about failing on progress, and like the roundabout's been very busy, and the tester said, "Oh, you should have went there. You were too slow. You were too indecisive." So I came up with a couple of different strategies and tips that will help you be more decisive and show better progress at roundabouts. So check out my video this coming Wednesday, about 5 or 6 o'clock. It will be on my YouTube channel, free of charge, like every other video, to help you achieve your driving goals. Okay. Now let's get back to this report sheet here. Okay. First of all, I'm going to give you a bit of info about the driving candidate, his thoughts, and what he learned from this test. Okay. So let me see. No, I don't. He didn't give me a huge amount of feedback, but the feedback he gave me is very, very relevant. Okay, so here's the story. This driving test here, you can see there's four grade 3 marks, which is not great, like, but it was his first attempt doing the test. Okay, he was extremely disappointed. The nerves got the better of him, and he was kind of disappointed because in the pre-test lessons he wasn't doing any of this wrong, and that's why I keep saying, like, you have to be very, very, very careful and sometimes very skeptical about pre-tests or mock tests or whatever you want to call them, because the way you drive in the mock tests is no, it's not going to be the same conditions. Like, the atmosphere is not the same. Okay, and sometimes it can be it can give you a false sense of security. Sometimes they're not worth it. Like, you could be wasting your time wasting your money, and you could be losing out on valuable teaching time as well, from the instructor, okay? The Turnabout then, the reason he got a grade 3 on the Turnabout was because an elderly cyclist came up along just as he was about to pull off at the start, and he said it was all a bit of a blur. He probably should have held off because the cyclist, even though the cyclist was going slowly, he was making progress to him. And from what I can gather, if I read between the lines, the learner driver pulled off to the right on the turnabout at the start when the cyclist was too close. An elderly cyclist of all people as well, and that was why he got the grade 3 there. He just panicked a bit, and then after that, then like a lot of other mistakes followed after that. I think the grade 3 on the turnabout was the first one, and then it kind of snowballed then after that, unfortunately. Observation moving on. Now, this is an interesting one, folks. I want you to be very, very aware of this. I want you to listen very carefully to what happened to this guy here, because you do not want this to happen to you, okay? Just bear with me there. This is important. So he was moving off, okay? He was doing his hill start. And look, generally speaking, he has no problem doing hill starts, but this time, probably because it was after the turnabout and he was a bit stressed and he was panicking a little bit, he basically stalled when he moved off, okay? He stalled the car. Now, he recovered quickly and he moved off again, but the problem was he was moving off from a parked position and he stalled, and he didn't double check the mirrors and the blind spot. So that basically meant that he was moving off on the basis of observation that was about 5 or 10 seconds out of date, and that's why he got a grade 3 on observation moving off. If you do stall, okay, you have to understand something. Stalling itself, cutting out, is not in itself a fail, okay? It's not. You probably lose a mark on clutch or something like that. Like there's a mark on clutch there, for example, you can see there. But it's not it's like stalling is not a fail. Stalling doesn't mean your test is over, but how you react to it could very well define the test. So fair enough, he stalled, okay? Fine. What he needed to do was get his handbrake up, start the engine, and do the whole thing again. Go into first gear, indicate to the right, check all 3 mirrors, blind spot, and then move off properly. And that way your observation is fresh and up to date. If you move off and you rush it and you panic and your observation is out of date, well then you're risking a grade 3. So just bear that in mind, folks, whether it's a hill start or whether it's a normal moving off. You don't want that to happen to you, okay? So that was that. The reverse then. Well, he said and he acknowledged that he went way too wide. His back wheels were in the other lane, the other lane, like, so he was very, very wide. And he acknowledges that he was, in a bit of a dangerous position. He got it back in eventually, but he was just way too wide. I think he was feeling the effects of the test. It was towards the end, and he'd already done probably 3 grade 3s at that stage, and he had probably, I think he'd mentally checked out at that stage. He's usually pretty good at the reverse around the corner, and that's why he's particularly disappointed about this mistake here. Like, just, you have to understand, if you're doing the reverse around the corner, sometimes it is okay to reverse and be a bit wider and to go into the other lane if it's a narrow road, okay? But if it's a wider road and you go very wide into the other lane, then it could be a little bit tricky, okay? Just remember, you have to just take each situation as it comes. Just because you go a bit wide does not mean you're going to fail the test, okay? It can depend on the width of the road. There will always be discretion involved. But this guy acknowledges that he went way too wide on his reverse and he was in a bad. That's why he got a grade 3 there. That's why I say you have to practice the reverse a lot on different types of corners, on like corners with a sharp angle corner and corners with a more gradual angle, and the more different corners you practice, the better you're going to be at it. Also, he got a grade 3 there on right of way turning right. He has no idea where that came from, no idea. If you get a grade 3 on right of way, the tester is basically saying to you that you pulled out too early when somebody else was on the main road. So this guy was taking a right turn, okay? So let's say, for example, he was at a stop sign, okay? He was at a stop sign, he was taking a right turn, like a T-junction. He was crossing 2 lanes, so, you have to be careful when you're doing that. There's more looks required. You have to be looking left and right and making sure 2 lanes are clear. And he obviously mistimed it, and he basically must have pulled out in front of somebody, and the tester gave him a grade 3 for that. And it's very much linked to observation. Like, observation is very much linked to right of way, because he got a few marks on observation turning right up there as well, as you can see near the top. I asked him then as well about the technical checks, the first one there, and he said the reason he got one grade 2 on the technical checks was because he couldn't operate the full headlights. He was saying that the tester asked him, how do you operate the full headlights? So what he did, he pulled it towards him, which meant that the full headlights flashed. You know, like when someone flashes you on the road, like a quick flash. Okay, and what he needed to do was push it the opposite way, and then the headlights would stay on. Okay, and he wasn't aware of that, because I think it was the first time that he'd used his car, and he wasn't really that familiar with the car. So that was, that's not ideal either. I mean, if you're using a car you're not familiar with, you really have to be giving yourself at least 3 or 4 or 5 lessons, so you're comfortable with it, and so you know all the controls. Because if you're doing a car that you're not that familiar with, you're probably more at risk you are more at risk of losing marks and failing, because you're not familiar with it and you're not as confident with the controls. So that was unfortunate in that case. But they're the main reasons he failed. But let's go down through the sheet now one by one, and we'll just make sure we have everything covered now on the report sheet, and then I'll get back to the comments. So the first one up there, we'll do the grade 1s, grade 2s, and grade 3s. We'll go from the top. Rules and checks. So this is usually to do with the theory and the road signs. Okay, so he got 3 questions or road signs wrong, a mixture of who knows, 2 and 1 or 1 and 2, whatever. But this is the reason he lost marks here, was because he wasn't really properly prepared when it came to the theory and the road signs. Okay, so it's very important that you are well prepared for theory, that you know the common questions you could get asked, like what's the yellow box, the rule of the yellow box, don't stop in it, maybe exception is turning right, clear way, no stopping or parking in a clear way during the time shown. What does the broken white line in the middle mean? You only cross if it's safe to do so. All those type of things. I have loads of videos on that anyway. But make sure you're ready for your theory and get yourself off to a good start, and then that shows confidence, and then the tester will hopefully return that confidence in you then. Technical checks then, well, clearly he wasn't familiar enough with the car. Okay, unfortunately he didn't get enough lessons, and he didn't get familiar enough with the driving school car, and he missed out on marks here. Like, for example, not knowing how the lights and the wipers and all that work. And unfortunately, before he'd even done any driving, he'd already lost 2 grade 2s there, on the rules and checks and on technical checks. So that means his margin for error is already much lower before he's even turned the engine on. So that's very disappointing. That's why you have to be prepared and give yourself as good a chance as possible. Because if you get 9 or more grade 2s, then the test is over. Like, when it comes to grade 2s here, he got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He got 9 grade 2s. So let's say, for example, that this guy got 0 grade 3s. Okay, no grade 3s. He got 9 grade 2 marks. So that means he would have failed on grade 2s anyway. And 2 of the grade 2s are simple enough things like technical checks and theory and road signs. Okay, so that just goes to show you how not being prepared properly, not knowing how the car works, can actually cause you to fail. Not on its own, but as a result of an accumulation of grade 2s. Moving down, position turning right. It's just a grade 1. Like, a grade 1 is a minor mark. It's a mark that's worthy of being noted, but it's not serious or anything like that. So the tester's just saying he was slightly out of position on a right turn. Maybe he straddled a line. Maybe he was a little bit out of position. Maybe he was a bit over the stop line. Something small, no big deal anyway. Observation moving off. Well, we know what that grade 3 is anyway, okay? And for those of you who are tuning in late, the reason he got a grade 3 on observation moving off. Grade 3 is serious, by the way. 1 grade 3 is a fail, okay? 1 grade 3 on its own is a fail. He stalled moving off, and he didn't double check the mirrors and blind spot, so he was relying on observation that was completely out of date, because he was in a bit of a panic and understandably a bit stressed, and that's why he failed there. And he got another grade 2 on observation moving off. So basically it must be something to do with not, I mean, it could be to do with maybe checking the mirrors in a queue of traffic, maybe lights or something like that, but more than likely not checking the blind spot moving off. or maybe not refreshing it, because like some people would give the blind spot a good check, like over the right shoulder moving off. They give it a good check, but then if it takes you a few extra seconds to move off, maybe on a hill or something like that, and you don't double check the blind spot, well then it goes out of date, and that's where you can lose marks. Okay. Observation turning right. Well, I think this is very much linked to the yield one turning right down below. Like when you have observation and yield, they're very much linked together, because if you're not observing properly, you could easily, pull out in front of somebody. So if he lost marks on observation turning right, I mean, it could be something to do with mirrors, but it's usually more likely to do with not looking left and right enough at a junction, maybe a stop sign or something like that, not taking account of traffic. Maybe he was looking too much to the right and not enough to the left. Looks could have been imbalanced. Maybe he didn't creep out enough to get a better view. You could have a stop sign, for example, but if you stay too far back and you're too defensive, and you're not creeping out to get a better view, well then that could also be linked to observation turning right. So basically, it's something to do with not giving enough looks, not observing properly on a right turn. Reaction to hazards. Now this could be literally anything. Okay, it could be down to slowing down suddenly or late, late and sudden braking. It could be to do with roadworks, parked cars. I find more and more often I hear from people that reaction hazard is about doing speed bumps in the wrong way. Now, all speed bumps are differently. All speed bumps need to be treated differently. Sometimes you might have a low speed bump and you could be absolutely fine going over it at 30 or 35 kilometers. Generally speaking, for your average standard speed ramp, you'd probably be doing around 20 or 25 kilometers in second gear. Some people do the ramps too fast. Some people do them too slow. Some people do them in the wrong gear. It all depends. But when you see reaction to hazard, it's something on the road that's there, like parked cars, potholes, speed bumps being done wrong, not reading the situation ahead. Maybe a cyclist. It could be. He didn't specify. I could be here all day speculating on that. I don't know, but it's some hazard anyway. He didn't react properly to twice. Two grade twos there, unfortunately. Clutch then. Now I suspect the reason he lost the mark on the clutch was because he stalled when he was moving off that time. Okay, I'm guessing that's why that mark is there, and that'll be separate then to the observation moving off. So he probably lost two marks there in the one area, one on the clutch for cutting out, and then one on the observation moving off for not double checking the blind spot before he moved off. So he told me in the emails as well that I've already mentioned a few times that he wasn't very much comfortable in the car. I think he only got one lesson in the car, so he wasn't very familiar with the car. And that means then that you're probably going to be a little bit rough around the edges when it comes to the clutch and maybe the gears and controls like the indicators and all that kind of stuff. So again, as I keep saying, you have to get driving lessons, especially if you're not using your own car and you're using the driving school car. The more lessons you get, the more confident you'll be, and the more likely you are not to lose marks on clutch or technical checks or anything like that. Because a lot of the reasons why he lost marks here was basically because he wasn't comfortable enough in the car. If he was more comfortable in the car, he probably wouldn't have cut out. He wouldn't have lost that mark on clutch. If he was more comfortable in the car, he wouldn't have cut out on the hill, and he wouldn't have lost that grade 3 mark on observation moving off. If he was more used to the car, he probably wouldn't have lost the mark there on technical checks when he didn't know how the headlights worked. So you can see there's 3 or 4 marks straight away that he lost purely from not being comfortable enough with the car. Okay, so that's a lesson I hope you can learn from as well. Yield right of way, turning right. So again, it could be linked to the observation turning right. I'm sure it is, but the testers, as I said to you, I already said, if you lose a mark on yield right of way, turning right, the tester is saying that you pulled out too soon and you didn't take account of other cars on the main road who had the right of way. So maybe there wasn't enough looks, didn't assess the situation, maybe didn't creep out. Because sometimes if you move off and you take a right turn like that, and you're taking the right turn from a position of weakness, where what I mean by that is you're a little bit blind, maybe partially blind on the right or left or something, and then you pull out. Well, that's not going to be good, because you're taking a chance then that somebody could be coming from behind a wall or behind a fence who have the right of way, and because you didn't handle it properly and you didn't creep out enough, you're then going to be the one at fault, and you're going to lose marks on that there. So that's what yield right of way is usually about. But he doesn't remember it. God love him, unfortunately. Reverse then, he went way too wide. That's why he got the grade 3 on the reverse there. He went way too wide. As I said already, he had kind of mentally given up by this stage, and he acknowledges he was far too wide, and that's why he lost the marks there. The good news is he's normally pretty good at this maneuver, he said, so it's probably just a once off, and it's probably just a result of everything else going wrong for him on the day. The turnabout then, as I said, he pulled out when he should have waited. There was a cyclist nearby, and he should have waited for the cyclist to overtake him, and unfortunately he didn't. He pulled out, and that got him into a bit of a state, and he started panicking then. And I'm pretty sure that the observation there is linked to the right of way mark. Okay, so he wasn't observing properly, so that meant he lost the grade 2 mark on observation. Didn't see the cyclist. Then he pulled out too close to the cyclist, and that's why he lost the mark on right of way. Okay, so that's why he lost marks there. That's the grade 3, the grade 3s, the grade 2s, and the grade 1s explained. The grade 1 on clutch jaw, I didn't get to that, but again, it's probably a minor enough one. Maybe he lifted the clutch a bit quick, maybe the car struggled a little bit, but didn't stall, but that's why he lost the grade 1. And then the grade 2 on clutch then is for stalling, okay? So, although this driving test report sheet looks pretty bad, when you drill down into it in more detail, it's not really too bad, and you can see that there's a lot of mitigating factors there. And I would say to this guy, if he's listening, I told him I was live streaming today, but I would say to him if he's listening, don't give up hope. I know I will say it looks bad on paper, but when you actually go down through it, you can see how there's a reason for all these mistakes, and a lot of them are kind of to do with not being used to the car. A lot of them are down to once-off things and stress and panic, and a lot of them are down to mentally giving up and mentally checking out. Okay, so yes, it looks bad, okay, but you can recover from this. You can learn from this, and you can do a lot better next time. So stick at it, and you'll get there. Okay, and the same goes for any of you out there who have had a similar experience. Okay then, folks, let's get back to the comments here then. Let me find where I was last. Let me see now. Where are we? Alex Fogarty in Mallow. Yeah, best of luck to you again, Alex. There. Irish J. My nerves got the better of me, but I managed to get through, and it was my first try to. Yeah, I can look at. Nobody understands more how nerves can get the better of you in a driving test. I completely understand that, but well done. Congrats on getting through it there, Irish J. Sinead Mullen, my test has been cancelled twice now because of weather and unforeseen circumstances. I have it again on Tuesday, so I'm hoping to God I pass. Well, I hope so too, Sinead Mullen. Third time lucky, I hope. Let me know if you have any questions. You can email me too. So if there's anything you're unsure of, Sinead, look, you've been very unlucky there, Sinead. Unfortunately, unforeseen circumstances do happen, like deaths, bereavements, a car breaking down. Testers are only human, okay? But what I find frustration is that they don't have a backup plan in place. That there's no backup tester around to take up the heat when a tester gets out sick or when he's late for whatever reason. And unfortunately, it's learners who pay the price by having to wait longer for a test, as if you're not already waiting long enough, which I understand. But anyway, the best of luck to you, Sinead. I hope you do it, and best wishes. Adam Donovan, well, I'm from Cork. I was going to do in Wilton, the busiest part of Cork for driving, especially. But fair play to the RSA for giving me an invite straight after the cancellation email. Yeah, depending on the test centre, they do try and fast track retests, okay? So if you do fail a test, they will try and get you in quicker the next time. This guy here, Adam Donovan got in very quickly after, so he's happy with that. And Wilton, yeah, Wilton is on the south side of Cork, not too far from Bishopstown. It's a busy old spot there. The roundabout there does cause a few little issues as well. So if you're in Cork and you're doing a test in Wilton, make sure, for God's sake, that you're familiar with that Wilton roundabout and you know what lane to be in, and that you're in the proper lane, and you don't change lanes too early when you're leaving the roundabout. I know Wilton. I used to live down in Cork. I lived down in Douglas and Frankfield years ago, so I used to be very familiar with Wilton and the Kinsale Road and all that kind of stuff. I haven't been there in years now, but Hopefully I will get a chance to do a video on the Wilton Roundabout at some stage in the future. Darius Beryl, is it okay to do roundabouts in gear 3? Yes, Darius, it is sometimes. Sometimes. So, like, normally you should do roundabouts in town, like, you know, the smaller roundabouts in town in second gear, usually. But if you have a bigger roundabout, like on a national road or something like that, a big wide roundabout or something, it's fine to do it in third gear as long as it's safe, as long as the car doesn't struggle as you slow it down a bit, and as long as it's, you know, a big open wide roundabout, it's absolutely fine to do it in third, because you kind of have to react to the conditions. You know, you have to drive in a way that reflects the conditions. So if it's a small roundabout, really small tight roundabout, you probably do it in second gear or maybe first gear. But if it's a bigger, more open roundabout and you have a clear view and you're safe to go, well then yeah, you should be absolutely fine doing it in third gear. Okay. Martin Mockler, yes, I have a lesson before my test. That's great. I am confident in my driving. It's just the nerves of the big day. I will have to binge watch your videos later. Thanks for the great content. You're very welcome, Martin. Best of luck to you. If you're a bit nervous, you know, that could be a good thing. That shows that you're taking this thing seriously and that you want to pass and you're not taking it lightly. So that's brilliant. Check out my videos on driving test nerves, okay? I've got 3 or 4 of them. I made one there recently on the things you should do, 8 things you should do on the morning of your driving test. So check that out, Martin. Or just type into YouTube's search box Dane Tyghe nerves, okay? And you'll find out some good tips on dealing with driving test nerves. Like I talk about living in the moment, you know, like don't try. I know this is easier said than done, okay, but try not to think about the past too much, about anything that happened in the past. Try not to think about the future. Just live in the moment, right here, right now. And if you do that, it can kind of block out any negativity and any nerves, okay? But it does take practice. You can do it. If you watch my videos, you'll have a better chance on that, okay? So check out my videos on driving test nerves. I think you'll find them useful. Okay, comments. Do you have to do a hill start on an automatic? Yes, you do. Oh, sorry, there we go. Sorry. Yes, you do have to do a hill start on an automatic. Okay, and if you have any kind of auto hold or something like that, you may well be asked by the tester to switch it off. Okay, because the tester is going to want to see you operating the handbrake in a normal way. The tester doesn't want to see you doing a hill start with auto hold because you're not being tested then on moving off on the hill. So you have to make sure you use the handbrake on the hill start doing an automatic, and that if you have auto hold, turn it off, because it's more than likely he'll ask you to turn it off anyway. Okay, but you will do a hill start and you'll do everything in an automatic. You will do a hill start in an automatic. You'll do a turnabout. You'll do a reverse. Everything is the same. You just don't have to worry about gears and clutch. Owen Canavan, is it? If you are too wide on the reverse, is it a fail? No, no, it's not a fit. Like it depends on how wide you are, Owen. Again, this is one of those answers that I say it depends on how far you go. It depends on the situation. So if you're really, really, really wide, okay, on a wide road, let's say, yeah, that could be a fail, possibly, okay. But if you're wide on a really, really narrow road, like I'm thinking of a reverse around the corner I do here in Wexford. It's in a housing estate, but the roads are so narrow that even if you're a bit wide, you kind of are on the other lane, like. But because the roads are so narrow, that's a mitigating factor, okay. Look, it's a very open question. The answer is it depends on the reverse, okay. But if you think you go a bit wide, okay, or on the other extreme, you think you've hit the curb, whatever you do, don't give up, okay. Keep focused. Keep keep your mental energy on what you're doing. Live in the moment. Rectify whatever mistake it is, and just get on with the test. Don't give up, okay? You might be pleasantly surprised then when you get back to the test, because learner drivers often think they've done something to fail them, but then when they get back to the test centre and they've told they've passed, they're delighted and they kind of say to themselves, geez, I thought I failed on this or on that. So just keep focused, don't give up, and keep going, because you might get a pleasant surprise at the end. John Kerwin, that's the main man, Dr. Bob's School of Motoring. So John says hello to you, John. Good to see you. The waiting area in Mallow Test Centre, is also upstairs. Thank you very much for sharing that, John. I wasn't aware of that. So for anybody out there, folks, that's doing a driving test in Killester, Dean's Grange, which is in Dublin, and Mallow in Cork, the waiting area is upstairs. So make sure you're waiting in the proper area, because the testers, they might not come down to you if you're not in the proper area. John also says, where possible, in Mallow, learners should visit their own test centre absolutely a day or two beforehand to familiarise yourselves with the layout. Very good advice there from John Kerwin. It's extremely good idea to visit the test centre wherever you're doing the test, just to get used to the layout. Because driving test centres, they're public buildings. Like, you can go in there, have a quick look around the waiting area, and then come back out again. It's fine. It's a public way. It's a public area. You can do that. And just as John says, it's great advice just so you're familiar with the area, and it just gets rid of any potential doubt there may be there. Like, it's handy enough in Wexford, because in Wexford the test centre is it's actually a bungalow house that's just been turned into a test centre. So it's all on the one level. The waiting area is literally right beside the offices of the test centres, all on the one level. So there's no issue there in Wexford. It's very simple. But in some places, the waiting area, it could be upstairs or downstairs, whatever. So make sure you're familiar with that. Wojciech, dobry wieczór. Wojciech, gdzie jesteś? Where were you, Wojciech? I thought you'd be in at the start, but my fault. I didn't actually advertise I was coming live tonight. I wasn't sure if I was, but I don't think I'm going to be live the next 2 weeks, because I'm going to be in London next week and I'm going to be in Poland the week after. So I probably won't be back doing live streams for at least 2, maybe 3 weeks. Okay, so sorry about that, folks. But good to see you, Wojciech. Dobry wieczór. Okay, asks, how often do you have to do the blind spot check? Well, it depends on what you're doing. Like generally, you check the blind spot when you're moving off. So just before you move off, make sure you check your tree mirrors and your blind spot, which is a good check. Like, make sure your shoulder comes out like that. You do a good proper check. Make sure it's up to date. If it takes you a bit longer to move off, or you stall or something like that, make sure you double check the blind spot and go ahead. You can do a quick sideways glance like that when you're changing lanes. Just make it quick. Don't do any dramatic movements of the head when you're moving the car. So, like, how often you check the blind spot, that depends on how often you change lanes or how often you move off. It's going to depend. Jammin19, do you have a video on who has the right of way in certain situations? Not really, no. I have a video on right of way where I'm advising people on how to judge whether to pull out or not, but I don't have a video specifically about who has the right of way in certain situations. I think it might be a good idea for a future video, actually. So you've probably got me thinking there on that. So thanks for that suggestion. But in the vast majority of my videos where I'm driving, like, I will be explaining who has right of way, or I'll be telling you who has right of way. But I suppose I don't have a specific one on right of way as such. Okay. Jagoda, does driving lessons with AXA or Aviva decrease insurance later? I think they have some really good offers. Yeah, Aviva have like, I don't know what the ins and outs of them are, but I think you can get 6 months discounted insurance or 6 months free insurance or something like that with Aviva. So there are some good options. I know insurance can be very expensive, so you should certainly check out Aviva and AXA, because they have their own driving schools, their own franchise. So and it could be worth checking them out, because they could have some good offers. But I'm not really sure about the details of that, actually. Owen Canavan, let's take it down to owner. Sorry. Once you return to the test center after the drive, is there anything else you have to complete to pass? Well, I kind of touched on this a few weeks ago in a previous video on. Not really. Like, once you get back to the test center, just park the car safely, follow the tester into the test center, into the office, and he'll give you the result. But what I would advise you to do is, and this is where John Kerwin's comment on familiarizing yourself with the test center is very important. So be familiar with where the car parking spaces are, and when you're coming back to the test center, make sure you stop in the space that you need to stop in. Normally you'll just drive straight in. You won't usually have to reverse in anyway. So nice gentle stop, okay? Handbrake first, then neutral, switch off the engine, then leave the car in gear, okay? Because when you leave the car in gear, it acts as extra security, so that, God forbid, if the handbrake fails, the fact that it's in gear is going to stop the car from rolling back. So it's a little safety action you can do that's going to look good. Then make sure you check your mirrors and your blind spot before you open the door to exit. Then close the door. Make sure you lock the car as well. That's a good, sensible thing to do. And just follow them in. So just by doing those things after the test can kind of leave a nice little finish to the whole driving test. And the tester sees then that you're doing all the right things in terms of safety, leaving the car in gear, checking your shoulder, all that kind of stuff, okay? But like apart from that, the test is more or less over. Then he's going to have his mind made up then whether you've passed or failed by this stage. Okay, let's see what else here then. Okay, asks, are you allowed to explain your intentions to the examiner, e.g., I'm about to do this or that? There's nothing wrong with you, like you can verbalize certain things. Like for example, if you're at a complicated lights and another car flashes you to go, and then you go and it kind of happens kind of quick, you can certainly verbalize that and say to the tester, oh, he's flashed me there, I'm just going to go, just in case the tester missed. Like I'd have faith in the testers, like that they wouldn't miss these things. But I have heard in some of the other driving instructor Facebook groups about sometimes they encourage learners to verbalize things, just because it just kind of confirms that they're doing this for a particular reason and they're not pulling out, like for example, if someone flashes you. But generally speaking, as a rule, you don't really need to be talking to the tester. You're better off just focusing on your driving and focusing on what you're about to do rather than the tester. He'll tell you what to do. You don't really have to say much to him, okay? Smurfy567, I'm practicing my driving in the family car that has no handbrake and hill assist. That's good. I'll be doing the test in that car. Will the instructor usually ask me to turn off this assist? It's a bit of a grey area. Yeah, they usually will. The tester, you mean, is it? I think you mean the driving tester. If it's a hill start, and they're specifically wanting to see you do a hill start, then yes, they are probably going to ask you to turn off the hill assist or the auto hold or whatever you want to call it for the hill start. Okay, generally the technology in your car is good. It should be embraced, like reversing cameras and parking sensors and all that kind of stuff is good. It's great. Like we need to embrace these kind of things. But um, the tester wants to see you do a hill start in a normal way, getting the bite and moving off in a normal way, because otherwise it's just similar to driving an automatic car. So yeah, to the best, most of the time they will ask you to turn off the hill assist in that case. Yeah. Okay, and getting to the end there now, folks, before we call it a night. Mitesh Gosavi, I think. What are the possible common situations when you need to check the blind spots? Whatever you do, don't be going around checking the blind spots at junctions and roundabouts and all this kind of stuff. You don't need. If you're at a junction, your main focus should be what's on the main road. If you're at a roundabout, your main focus is what's on the roundabout and what's on the right. Okay. The blind spot is usually done when you're moving off from a parked position, like on a hill start or something like that, and possibly when you're changing lanes. But it's just a quick one changing lanes, so that the chin wouldn't go beyond the shoulder at all, okay? And you'd be mostly using your eyes to check the blind spot when you're changing lanes. But they'd be the usual times, moving off from a parked position and changing lanes, okay? That'll be the usual times. There could be a case maybe in really slow moving traffic, really slow moving busy traffic, when you're changing lanes slowly, you're not moving fast. You can give a decent blind spot check then, but it's going to depend on the situation. But whatever you do, and for some reason, I'd hear of drivers who are doing the test, and they may originally be from India or Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, these places, the Indian subcontinent. They seem to have this I don't know, it's this weird, maybe it's a cultural thing where every time they're at junctions and roundabouts, they're doing all this kind of stuff, like looking over blind spots, just at like a normal roundabout or a normal stop sign, and then they're failing the test, and they're wondering why they're failing for this type of thing. And the same moving off, they're doing all these excessive blind spots. It's not needed. Like, you don't need to do all this stuff. This is why I always say to people, get professional driving lessons so you can get rid of all these weird, strange misconceptions you have about driving. Okay. Sorry. What are the hill stops? Are the hill stops mandatory, like the turnabout? Yeah. The on an automatic. Yeah, you will do. You will be asked to do a hill start on an automatic. You might not necessarily be asked to pull in on the left and do a hill on a big hill. Like the hill start could be in traffic, like a traffic lights. But yeah, the tester will want to see you do a hill start in an automatic car as well. Yeah, absolutely. Where you have to use your handbrake and not any auto hold or hill assist. Yeah. Emily H, if someone lets you in when changing lanes, are you allowed to put the hand up to thank people during the test, or should it be avoided? There's nothing really wrong with that, Emily. Again, there's discretion there. There's a big difference between putting your hand up to say thank you, okay, which is good, which is nice. It's good courtesy to do. And there's a big difference between that and then if somebody is crossing the road, for example, at an unmarked pedestrian crossing, and you do this, like you wave them out. That's a big no-no. Don't encourage people or cars out onto the road. But if you want to just put your hand up briefly to say thanks, that's fine. There's no problem with that. That's good courtesy, to be honest with you. And good luck to you, Emily, if you're doing a test or changing lane, as I said there. Yeah, you can put the hand. Just keep it quick though. Don't be don't be trying to make friends or anything like that. The most important thing is to focus on your driving in that moment. This is why when you're changing lanes, it's so important to have your indicator on and to leave it on, even if you can't get across. You know, when you're changing lanes, so even if you can't get across straight away, have the indicator on because you might benefit from somebody just letting you out then, or letting you cross. But the best luck to you, Emily, in your test. I hope you do it. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'll be signing off soon, but my email is there. Gamala, I think, or Gamala Magdi, could you explain to me, please, what that means, progress on the straight? So progress on the straight means that you are getting marked down for driving too slow on a straight road. So the tester is basically saying you were too slow. Let's say, for example, it was a 50-kilometer zone and you were only driving 30. Maybe you didn't know the speed limit. Maybe you weren't watching out for the speed signs. But it's basically down to driving too slow on a good straight road, driving forward, and and a lot of people do lose marks and fail for being too slow and being too hesitant, unfortunately. So that's what progress on the straight means. Emily there again, perfect, thank you. Yes, test next Thursday. I was told to avoid saying thanks, but I feel it's awful rude not doing. Yeah, look, it's a bit of it's a discretion thing, I think people who say to you to avoid saying thanks, they probably have your best interests at heart. They probably want you to focus on your driving, which I think is good. But like, I can tell you, there's nothing wrong with just putting the hand up quickly to say thank you. It's purely a courtesy thing, Just as long as it doesn't distract you, as well. Like you don't want to be taking your hands off the wheel for too long. You don't want to be overdoing it, obviously. But a quick thank you is fine. It's no big deal at all. As I said, just make sure you don't wave people out onto the road at pedestrian crossings or at junctions or anything like that, But there's nothing wrong with saying thanks and being nice, Okay, asks, are hatch signs always to be avoided? Yeah, usually they are, but there will be exceptions. Like if you're overtaking something awkward, or you're overtaking parked cars and you've no option but to go over the hatch lines, well then you have to go over them, like, because otherwise you'd be stuck behind the parked cars for forever. So generally speaking, don't drive on the hatch lines, but in an emergency or in an awkward situation, you can certainly go over them to overtake an obstruction or overtake a slow vehicle or something like that, okay? Sonia's World, what are the striped lines on the road that look like trapezium? What's a trapezium? I have no idea what that is. Sonia, if you want to clarify that there, I'll be signing off here in a minute or two. But striped or stripped? Oh God. Sometimes there's white lines or yellow lines going across the road, like rumble strips, to encourage you to slow down. Usually you might see them coming down on a steep hill or something like that. They're kind of like there to just to let you know that you're coming to a junction, maybe a downhill junction, to slow down. You have the hatch lines, which are like little horizontal lines surrounded by a continuous white line. They're generally to be avoided. You've got yellow hatch lines usually on the left on main roads. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Striped, Gamala Magda, you're very welcome. Best luck to you, Gamala, or Jamala, however I'm saying that. Sonia's World, striped lines between two. Oh, they're probably hatch lines, Sonia, I think. White, is it? Did you say white? Yeah, there are. I think you're talking about hatch lines. So white lines, like say going across like this, horizontal, surrounded by a solid white line. Okay, they're hatched lines, and you'll often find them in the middle of the road or on the side of the road to create more space either for other traffic or for pedestrians. And you should avoid them. You should not cross them. But if you've no option but to cross them, then you have to cross them. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes on a right turn, or if you're overtaking an obstruction. Okay, says thank you. Have a good day. Best wishes to you. Pleasure as always. And good luck to you if you're doing a test or if you're learning to drive, whatever the case may be. So, folks, just a quick rundown then. The signs up there. Number 1, dangerous bend. Number 2, dangerous corner. Number 3, keep right. Number 4 is a cul-de-sac or a dead end. And number 5 is a warning sign, just to warn you of some danger up ahead, like a concealed entrance. myroadsafety.ie, that's where you go to manage your driving test. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And remember, if you hit that subscribe button and click the bell notification, you will be aware then of any new videos I upload. You can always support me by PayPal or Revolut. Thank you in advance if you are doing that, and thanks so much to anybody who has already donated. Really, really appreciate it. My TikTok is there if you want to check them out, and my email is there too, danetyghe@gmail.com, for any questions you have on driving, or if you'd like me to analyse your report sheet. I do get between 70 and 100 emails a week, so just bear with me if it takes me a little longer to get back to you. Just bear that in mind, please. A couple more comments there now. I'm just going to try and get all the comments done before I sign off, folks. Let me see. So where was I? Sonia's World. Yeah. Gamala Magdi, you're very welcome, Gamala. Sonia's World, Stripe Lines. Yeah, I think I answered that, Sonia. I think I done it. Okay says thank you. You're very welcome. Okay. Yeah, sometimes you might have the hash lines on the big roundabouts too. Yeah, so just be aware of that. You should avoid them on the bigger roundabouts because there shouldn't be any reason not to, because you have your own lane on the roundabout. Okay, so if you show good lane distance on the roundabout, you shouldn't be going into hash lines. Okay. Yeah, Sonia confirms that. Mitesh then, thanks, you're very welcome. Yes, Mitesh Gosavi just reminded me to remind you, my next video is Wednesday, okay? Wednesday evening around about 5 or 6. I'm going to have a great new video on progress at roundabouts, okay? I'm going to give you some great tips on how to show good progress, how to be confident and decisive at roundabouts, particularly when they're really, really busy and there's a big line of cars coming, and I'll be showing you how you can manage that situation. So check out my next video, folks, in a few days' time, Wednesday evening, okay? Let me see. We got all the comments in there. A couple of thank yous. You're all very welcome. Anyone that says thanks, you're more than welcome. Abduk or Hassan, waiting my test to do, but my first language is not English. Well, you might just look into getting a translator there, Abdul, but usually you don't need like a whole lot of English, because like as long as you know what left and right means, you'll be fine. You might be able to have it. You will be able to have a translator for the first part of the test, like the theory and the technical checks, but not in the actual test itself. So check that out if you can. But you should be fine. I mean, you don't need to be Shakespeare to do a driving test. And Sonia's World says, "Thank you. You're very welcome, Sonia, and thank you very much for tuning in." So, folks, thanks very much for being with me tonight. I hope you got some useful information here. I just want to wish you all the best to any learners out there. Good luck to you if you have a driving test coming up. My email is there if you have any questions or concerns about driving. I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. And I won't be doing a live stream now for a few weeks, but I hope to keep the videos coming anyway. As I said, I'll have a new one on Wednesday, and so check that out on progress on roundabouts. And in the meantime, best wishes, safe travels, and I'll see you soon. Slán go fóill.